All right. Hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Friday, August 15th, 2025. This is your afternoon update on now Hurricane Erin, located a few hundred miles to the northeast of the northern Leeward Islands. We also have Invest 98L moving ashore today near the coast of Brownsville, Texas. Our two systems kind of highlighted for you right here, and that's pretty much all the Atlantic Basin has going on today. And again, threats to the eastern U.S. somewhat limited here this afternoon. Mostly good news with Erin and mostly good news with Invest 98L. So let's go ahead and take a look at the National Hurricane Center's advisory on Erin. This is the 11 a.m. advisory. Advisory number 17. Erin's going to be quite a long-lived storm at the end of the day here. It's going to be one of the longer track storms we've probably seen in some time. But maximum sea wind 75 miles an hour. Air Force and NOAA hurricane hunters deployed up there to the Virgin Islands have been hard at work surveying Erin as soon as she got into range. And this morning, the U.S. Air Force hurricane hunters found that those winds have increased a little bit more and makes Erin the first hurricane of the 2025 season. This is coming a couple of days after the first one, climatologically speaking, but basically we're right on schedule. That movement to the west-northwest, 18 miles an hour. Erin's still moving along at a nice clip, and confidence continues to be high that Erin is going to continue to pull northward. We can already see that latitude gain beginning as she intensifies, and it should miss the northern Leeward Islands for the most part, but a couple of islands here have been issued a tropical storm watch for some passing outer bands, and also northern and kind of eastern sides of Puerto Rico could be seeing some heavy rainfall as Erin passes by. You can see this here in the key messages. They have localized up to 6 inches. This is probably hard to see on your screen, but localized about 4 to 6 inches of rain for parts of those islands. And if you want to take a quick look at who's under a tropical storm watch, I'm not going to try to pronounce all these, but those guys right there, if you want to pause it, that's your areas under a tropical storm watch at this hour. I don't think Puerto Rico is going to get one given the track and the confidence in that. So it's probably all we're going to see out of that. And those probably won't even likely become warnings, although depending on how strong she gets, maybe. But definitely not going to see any hurricane watches out of this. Erin will stay north as far as the core of those worst winds. You can see here by the Hurricane Center's track, no major changes over the last couple of runs. We have seen a pretty significant shift, though, generally speaking, over the last 3 or 4 days, where now Erin is no longer forecast to come directly over Bermuda. We talked about 70 west kind of being that, kind of line in the sand. And you can see, of course, the Hurricane Center's track has shifted west of 70 west, but has not shifted so far west that we're now deeply concerned about any U.S. impacts. This is not going to hit Florida. It's not going to hit Georgia or the Carolinas. The biggest concern we had and still could have is this could kind of ride that western side of the cone a little bit, might get close enough to the Outer Banks for some indirect impacts. Erin could definitely get close enough for some rip currents, coastal erosion, things like that. But any direct impact to the U.S. at this point is very unlikely. But it looks like Erin is actually going to shoot the goalpost between Bermuda and the U.S., which, given the setup, is actually not that bad. If we can put this right in the middle, that's really the best case scenario for both sides, because a couple of days ago, Bermuda looked like they were going to get hammered by this, and now it looks like, maybe this is going to try to shoot that gap a little more. So the westward shifts have actually not been terrible in terms of overall, everyone's lives considered here. We just don't want to see any more westward shifts. We saw this yesterday with the GFS. The 18Z run yesterday started really pushing its members further west and almost got, a couple of them into Hatteras. But then the morning runs, which have that hurricane hunter data in them now, have shifted back. So you can see that difference in the last ensemble runs. They've tightened a little bit and they've kind of shifted back and they've kind of landed in the middle. So I think at this point, the windshield wipers you're going to see are going to be less and less. And this track is becoming a little more locked in. It's just going to be, is it a little more on the west side or a little more on the east side? Does it give Bermuda a little more? Or do they need a tropical storm watch or a hurricane watch? Do the Outer Banks need to be ready for some more coastal erosion, that kind of thing? But at this point, even with the official super ensemble overlaid here, it does look like, the confidence in the track is coming into better clarity here today with that new Hurricane Hunter data. And I don't anticipate at this point seeing any more gigantic shifts, especially now that Erin is a little bit more organized and we don't see a weak system kind of fighting for its center anymore. We kind of have an established storm we're really following along with here. So again, Hurricane Hunters have been in there this morning. Pressure is starting to fall. 998 in their first pass from AF 308 here and down to 994 in the last pass. And you can see that this belt of stronger winds on the north side, and the purple is where those hurricane force winds are. The kind of the other side of the storm, the west and south side of the storm, isn't nearly as impressive. which, given the high pressure to the north, not surprising at all that that's what we're seeing there. But definitely a storm that is starting to intensify. And although it still looks a little on satellite, over here on Tropical Tidbits, we can definitely see that there's some dry air intrusion on the north side of it still. It's fighting off these little pockets, but the convective banding structures become better. There is a more clear CDO starting to form, and tighter thunderstorms are condensing around that circulation center. And again, we do have a little bit better outflow channels in at least 2 quadrants to some degree. So while there's still some northeasterly wind shear to some degree and a little bit of dry air sneaking into the storm, especially right around here on the edge of the SAL, what's going to happen is this SAL will become more diffuse and kind of move away as Erin pulls away from it. And in this region here, she'll find a much better environment. And this is where our models almost uniformly really bottom this thing out. The GFS 12Z run that's coming right now bottoms this thing out pretty quick. It has it going to 984 millibars by tomorrow morning, or overnight tonight, really, and continues to fall into the 960s and 950s, becoming a powerful major hurricane by the end of the weekend. This tracks along with the Hurricane Center's official forecast, which has it as a major hurricane. And in fact, they've went up to 140 on this in 72 hours. So Erin, a rapid intensification is expected with Erin. HWRF sees this pretty well too. HWRF actually has a really good picture of this at 18Z today. It has the convective structure pretty well, with those thunderstorms starting to pull into the center a little bit more, that kind of dual broken band structure with the dry air intrusion. The HWRF pretty much nailed the initialization of this at 18Z, which is pretty much right now. We're going to be close to it while we're recording. And then you can see here, it kind of has like one more frame where even into this afternoon, it kind of still struggles a little bit, but the convection is increasing. You see the thunderstorms increase, and then boom, that pressure starts falling. 988, 983 overnight, 979, after midnight, and then the 970s by the time we wake up tomorrow. And then as we go into Sunday morning, we're talking 950s, storms exploding in size and intensity, and we're going to have a powerful hurricane on our hands going into early next week. But again, thankfully, although it's going to be strong, again, the confidence is fairly high that Erin is going to miss. It's going to go right between the goalposts there. Again, going to get close enough to Bermuda, at least tropical storm conditions. Hurricane conditions definitely not out of the question, depending on exactly where it wants to shimmy back and forth in that cone. So definitely keep an eye on it, Bermuda and in the Outer Banks and whatnot. And even in eastern Florida, Georgia, you're not going to see any direct impacts, but you will see a lot of high surf, a lot of rip current, swell waves, and coastal erosion. This could be a kind of a mini nor'easter type event for you guys. So don't discount this as, oh, well, it's going to go off to our east, no big deal at all. Obviously, if you live inland, it's not going to be a problem for you. But if you live at the coast, man, this could be kind of nasty, and this could definitely shape your weather for the weekend or early next week. Could be a little bit of a backdoor cold front, too. Maybe we'll get a little bit of cool air off Canada, and maybe it'll pull it down. That happens sometimes in August. So those days are always welcome, especially after the brutal summer it's been, especially down there in Florida. So that's kind of what I got on Erin. I don't think I'm going to have another video on Erin because, honestly, unless something crazy changes, this is pretty much what we've got, and I don't expect any major changes here. So we will keep doing updates on the Facebook page, obviously, but as far as YouTube goes, I doubt we're going to have another big one on Erin, especially with my plans this weekend. But before I leave you, I want to talk about the rest of the stuff real quick. Invest 98L moving into Brownsville today. This system kind of popped up over the Yucatan, moved across into the Bay of Campeche. Hurricane hunters flew it last night. They got up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, humped to the plane, and went out there and took a look. And they just really didn't find a whole lot of a circulation center. They made one quick pass, went down, and pretty sharp trough access, but no closed low. And basically where the closed low would be like right here. And I think this little low basically spun up and then just moved into Brownsville over the last few hours. You can see it on radar. So I don't think at this point the system's going to be able to develop, but a little bit of rain is going to come in for South Texas. Models are not really enthused, but I think this kind of shows it where you're going to have these pockets of 2 to 3 inches of rain, and then a lot of people just won't get a whole lot of rain. So somewhat welcome rain, but of course, the rain is more welcome over here along the border where, of course, the rain doesn't look like it wants to fall. But some rainfall for South Texas going into the weekend and early next week. This is 60 hours out, so there's little pockets of heavy rainfall associated with thunderstorms. Could be an isolated tornado, maybe, with the rotation. So just keep an eye on it down there in South Texas. But Invest 98L did not really get going. So taking a look at what happens post-Erin, post-98L. We're going to have a bit of a reset as we go into the next couple of days. We will have our next low-pressure area leaving Africa here not too long after Erin. The next wave is set to come off, and there's going to be a series of probably 2 or 3 waves that have been pretty much juiced up over Africa starting to leave. Now, what happens is Erin's, This is about a week out after Erin. So Erin's already long gone on this picture. And the two areas we're going to be watching is, again, the northern Caribbean, the Leeward Islands area, because one of these waves that come off pretty much rides across Africa and looks like it's going to want to develop in the same region Erin did. You get pretty much to the west of 40 west. That's when the water temperatures warm up. Anything on this side of this line is pretty lukewarm. Remember, Erin popped up over the islands, and then it had this like really rough spot where it looked like crap for a couple days. Going to be the same thing with these next waves. They're not going to have a great environment out the window at the gate here, but as we get them over into the Caribbean, they could be a little more hospitable, and also maybe the Western Caribbean could have another wave popping up, a little bit of cyclogenesis down there, kind of what we saw with 98L. Sometimes these patterns repeat. They'll spit 2 or 3 storms out of that little gyre. You can see that the GFS has a nice area of lower pressure. You could have a little mini kind of Central American gyre thing going on. August isn't the greatest time for that, but it's not impossible. But this will be the next wave we'll have to watch carefully, and there could be yet another one behind this one that the models aren't picking up on. I think generally speaking, your MJO and upper level wind forecast is going to be pretty meager. The U.S., the Atlantic Basin is just not going to be particularly great. It's not going to be nearly as primed as it was when Erin was coming off and some of these other systems were forming. The CPC guidance for the MJO, depending on which one you look at, definitely going into phase 3, which is not the greatest for the Atlantic. 781 or 812 is kind of your better window for development in the Atlantic. And the MJO also expected to weaken on some models, especially the Euro, kind of takes us into that circle of death as we go into the second or really the third week of August. So I think that overall, the overall forcing, if you look at where the best forcing is going to be down here over Africa. So the waves are going to be, the AEWs are going to be juiced up leaving Africa, and then they're going to kind of hit an kind of setup in the Atlantic. So climatology will help us out a little bit here. We'll have enough climatology on our side to see some of these waves have a shot. Just going to see how it plays out. There'll be more waves behind Erin that will probably follow in her tracks to some degree or another, and then it'll just depend where the high pressures are all set up. But the threats aren't going anywhere. But again, nothing on the docket, nothing immediately threatening for the next 7 days. So as these waves develop and as they get going, we will probably be back here on YouTube with more discussions and more updates. And until then, everything else will be on the page day to day. We'll have something every day for you. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and have a good one. Thanks.